Ooh, but this hinge. Welcome back to another Relax Fit edition of the long-term phone follow-ups, a series I've lovingly been calling the checkup. This video, we're taking a look back at a phone that I would like to deliver the Most Improved Award of 2020, the Microsoft Surface Duo. A phone that got off to a shaky start, a phone that I really don't feel should be called a phone, if we're being totally frank. But one that I continue to be taken with, and one that I think delivers so many good ideas that it's been frustrating that I think it's gotten kind of a raw, shallow examination in the overall mobile space. I just don't think you can have a Duo conversation without properly defining what the Duo is. I think it's kind of hack reviewing if, let's say we look at the Duo's initial launch price tag, that's all we're going to compare it against. It was $1,500. What other devices were $1,500? And that's a one-to-one comparison. I don't really feel that properly conveys what a device like this has to offer. To that same token, it's difficult trying to cherry pick. Because I feel like if you're going to be more specific about what your review criteria are, you just need to be a little bit more upfront with what your personal bias might be when you're taking a look at a gadget like this. And I think it's one of those things where the Duo is judged unfairly or is judged harsher, but it's not really given some of the considerations that I think it deserves. As soon as you add moving parts to a hinge, I feel techies do a miserable job of accounting for that in the price of the phone. We can look at another device, like I've got it here on the table, like the LG Wing. The LG Wing has two completely separate moving pieces on a phone. One is passive, where you flip out the display, and then it also has that periscoping selfie camera. So when a techie picks up a device like this, and whinges on about, well, it's only got this SoC. How can LG justify the price of a 765 and not take into account multiple moving parts? Then I think you're probably bad at tech. You know, your assessment of this gadget is not being honest about what this device has to offer. And instead, you're looking at ways that you can help make sure that that device fails. The Duo fell into a very similar trap. There is nothing like this hardware, and that has some good things, and that means some bad things. But when you open this clamshell folding phone, this dual display phone, each one of these panels being thinner than an iPhone SE, coming in at roughly the same thickness as the camera module on a Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, is shockingly thin. If you followed my other reviews in the past, you know I'm not that person who really waxes philosophical and artistic and emotional about the aesthetics of a device, because more often than not, even on a phone that I really like the hardware, I'm going to slap a case on it. For phones that I think offer some interesting, more mainstream hardware options, I'm going to slap a case on it. And even for gadgets that I think make for excellent communicator pocket phones, they're pocket friendly, I'm still going to slap a case on it. The Duo forces you to confront a completely different philosophy for how you might manage or handle a mobile data-driven pocket computer. It's not a phone. It doesn't feel like a phone. It doesn't look like a phone. It doesn't act or perform like a phone. Holding it up to say, well, but it's not as good a phone as a more traditional, candy bar form factor, does such a huge disservice. I'm really not trying to sound like Panos Panay. The emotion and the power of what you can accomplish is just so moving. Nah, that's not really my bag. But every time I pick up this little pocket Surface, I am re-impressed with what they've been able to accomplish. The flip side of that is this device has probably been used the least aggressively out of all of the phones that I reviewed in 2020. So for my personal bias and how impressed I am with hardware, I'm definitely more of a hardware guy than a software guy. This has left my home the least. It's been used probably with the most care and attention of all the gadgets that I've reviewed. And like if I were to draw an immediate comparison between Duo and a dual screen case like the V60, I have been far less kind to the V60, and I expect that it's probably survived significantly more abuse than what might have wrecked the Duo. And the philosophy on this is a very important metric to drill down on. What I do with the V60 is different because I still expect that the dual display case is going to do a halfway decent job of protecting the main phone. So if I destroy the case, that's sad and it is expensive, but the case did its job. It sacrificed itself to make sure that the main core phone is going to survive. There is no comparison. There is no corollary to that idea on the Duo. I played with putting on the little bumpers. I really don't like what that added and how it made the device more cumbersome to hold. I'm just exceedingly careful with what I do using the Duo out and about. To that same token though, when I do leave the house with the Duo, I have found zero issue in leaving it in a single screen mode. For all of the whining and whinging about, I don't know, this form factor, it's hard to use. This just brings me back to devices that I have absolutely adored, like the BlackBerry Passport. It is a very different form factor. It's a very square and chunky kind of view. And yet it bothers me not at all keeping it like this in my pocket, sometimes even in my back pocket, and I pull it out, I use it like a phone, and I put it away, and that interaction is clean and simple to the point. And I haven't been, a core mobile daily driver use has not been infringed upon by having a different aspect ratio display. In fact, there are some times where typing out a larger message on this wider canvas when I'm going two thumbs has been a benefit, not a detriment, has been a perk. I don't think swipe typing is as good. I don't think swipe typing is as clean on the Duo, but single screen, two thumb tap typing is actually better in most of my experiences than what I find on a skinnier display, especially as we start approaching cinema aspect ratios. The Duo is not a phone. It is a pocketable tablet. And that's exactly what the Duo thinks that it is. It thinks that it's one canvas that is automatically divided into two zones for full multitasking. Take an iPad mini, fold it in half so that it can fit in your pocket, and you end up with the Surface Duo. This feels like the natural evolution of those old Asus Transformer tablets. It feels like a smart play against, NextDocs and DeX and Screen Plus. It's just such a clear translation of what Microsoft thinks a portable data device should be, and then using Android as the framework to accomplish that, which actually that's probably the best place to segue into the actual usage and where I feel the Duo has become one of the most improved devices of last year. When I originally reviewed the Duo, one of my main concerns was orientation and navigation. That's where I think we saw most of those early gremlins, especially on the pre-release software, the embargo software where people were putting out reviews of using the device, and then Microsoft put out software patches a day before the embargo lifted, which is a terrible launch strategy. So you ended up with a lot of those early reviews like, well, I mean, some of this has gotten better, but I'm going to show you the B-roll we shot yesterday. Not what it can do today, but this is what the B-roll looked like when we had problems. Shallow, not quite a fair assessment, but where I found most of the challenges are how specific the Duo was in managing navigation. You had to be very clear and very tactily articulate in moving panels and apps around. Going from side to side, going full screen, spanning both sides of the phone, or in single application use on each side. It was cumbersome enough to me originally that I recommended just going back to 3-button navigation. Have a distinct back button, have the swipe only be for something, for the action of spanning both displays, and then having a dedicated multitasking button to get into your recent apps and services. As we've seen, first there was the major, the actual OTA update, but as we've seen from the Microsoft launcher betas that have been coming out on a wonderfully regular timetable, I'm back to using gesture navigation on the Duo and feeling really good about it. Those articulated controls that resemble the experiences on other phones, and the way that it divides this across two screens, I feel like Microsoft has polished this up phenomenally well. Occasionally still run into a few issues with apps that really don't know what to make of this, especially older games. Older games seem to be one of the pain points as I go back and I try and play some of my favorite titles, and I go half screen and it goes portrait mode in half screen, but then I try to turn it and then it doesn't know what to do with this form factor or with this aspect ratio. That can still be problematic. But for core and especially more modern services, the Duo is cutting this surface up, is cutting this canvas up, and is moving things around phenomenally well now. It's totally fair to say that you're still going to encounter those little moments of jank. Microsoft is doing something with Android that Android can't really do. Oh, but the Duo doesn't have Android 11 yet, and it might not get it until this summer. I think Microsoft has actually done a really good job of sort of showcasing the deficiencies in Android, and a lot of what they're going to do with their Android 11 update, getting that out and working with Google on this, is going to serve as a huge benefit to the Android community. Their contributions to Android are going to help future folding phone, dual display phones, and they've created their own unique architecture for how apps can work across larger canvases and be more screen and resolution aware. Something that Google has started the process on, I feel Microsoft is going to do a better job accomplishing in the long run. And the two collaborating, Microsoft and Google, on this type of usage is going to be a huge boon for the community, especially those of us who are more excited about multi-screen and folding phones. That's an area where Microsoft should be getting a little bit more credit. Not just, well, we don't have Android 11. It's not good enough. Android 11 on this is a very different animal than Android 11 on something like this. To look at the OTAs on the Duo and say, well, that's not good enough, but to completely disregard all of the launcher updates and all of the keyboard updates, which were two of the areas that needed the most polish, you're going out of your way to judge the Duo more harshly, even though it is, Microsoft is kind of living up to that expectation. It's different, but everything about the Duo is a little bit different. The weak spots still remain. Camera performance has improved, but it's only ever going to be a very good selfie shooter. If you can survive on a phone with only the selfie camera, which I feel there are a fair but small number of people who might resemble that. I think the place I've been most critically disappointed, like on a lot of other phones that play tricks with cameras, front and rear facing cameras, like the Nubia, the dual display Nubia, I think was a good example of this. I still find it irksome that there's a difference between rear camera performance and front camera performance when it's the exact same camera. Where if I'm trying to use the front facing camera as a selfie, there seems to be a different processing on image stabilization than when I'm using it in rear camera mode. And I don't really feel that should happen. It's one of my most critical frustrations with the device. And it's not that it's necessarily bad. It's still a front-facing camera. I'm still accomplishing selfie and video calls to the same degree that I would on almost any other phone. It just knowing that if I were to flip that around in the camera app and shoot a video, it seems to be smoother in that orientation than when I point the camera at myself and it's the same camera. Again, it's more just knowing that it shouldn't be that way. That's what makes me more frustrated. But what I can't fault is the processing power. Going through the year and moving back and forth between phones with 765s and 865s, getting to play with the Galaxy S21 with the 888, all of this nerd rage and gnashing of teeth. Oh, this only has Snapdragon 855. I don't think that's gonna be good enough. This chipset is still gross overkill for the vast majority of mobile services that people are going to do or are going to use when they're out and about. I think it's a funny little quirk of optimization that somewhere in Microsoft's image processing software has optimized this really well for video transcoding. I mean, it still tops the list on PowerDirector. If you just want to do a very simple cut and re-edit on a single track of video, it's outperforming Samsung on PowerDirector by a decent little margin. That shouldn't be, but again, optimization matters. And what you feel in using an 855 here is not only adequate, it's head and shoulders above the performance of most of our 765 devices. And to that credit, especially after that major OTA that we got, I've been very happy with the battery life. There's something about, there's this idea we have, a dual display phone, a premium tiered chipset. The battery on this is pretty small. The overall capacity is pretty small. And yet, and after the OTA, I've had very little issues getting to the end of a day. I still consume a lot of content because there's a natural inclination to always be multitasking. There's something about dual display that offers up a tangible benefit over high refresh. So I don't get the most liquid, smooth app drawer, but I'm constantly, on Discord and watching a YouTube video, streaming Netflix and, writing a document. There's always multiple things happening on this phone, and battery life hangs in there. If we look at the runtime per battery capacity, this is hanging in there phenomenally well against phones with higher refresh rate displays, often outperforming per capacity what those other devices are capable of. Little things that I think would definitely help spruce up the offering would be better support for the stylus. Now, that's one of the critical missing links here, is I want to see more of that Microsoft polish on the Surface line of accessories. Maybe better audio from a USB dongle, but I end up using, like a FiiO BTR5 whenever I pick this up. But, I pick up a stylus and I want a little bit more of that LG or Note experience for custom menus and custom features and shortcuts and accessibility options. And that, I think, would help push this over the edge, where you would have a more one-to-one conversation between this and a Galaxy Note. Circling back, Microsoft is pushing the boundaries on software and hardware to such an extreme degree. That's the last place, I think, where some skepticism or some concerns about the Duo are absolutely fair. For my limited excursions with the Duo, where I take it out, I pick up my daughter from school, or I take her, we go make a quick run to the grocery store. Like, it's been out of the house, but not to the same degree as like my LGs or my OnePluses or definitely my Sonys. I would say that the Hinge has proven to be less of a fear point than I was expecting. The act of opening and closing this, there is one little point where I can feel not a catch. It's just not quite as smooth as when I first got the phone. So if that's, a little bit of grit or pocket lint or something getting into those hinges, this action, I really expected this action to age poorer, to age poorly, even over the initial first year. So I'm very happy to feel that right about there is about the only moment I feel, but the action in moving the panels back and forth is still terrifically smooth. Like, I could do this all day. It feels really good. I was expecting more bumps along the road. for stuff getting wedged into those hinges. And if we're going to have any faith in a device with panels this small, Microsoft absolutely needs to address sort of the side materials on the Duo. I thankfully have not had any serious issues with cracking along the USB-C port, but this is absolutely a concern for the long-term health and durability of a product like this, where the panel itself is thinner than most of the USB-C cables I have. The shielding is thicker, and I think that contributes to the wear and tear, as the device might be just slightly off balanced or just wobbling on a table or just not quite, lining up properly. And then the action of putting in a USB cable, maybe you try to plug it in, you're in a hurry, you're not paying close attention, and you just kind of microscopically nick the plastic at the edges around this USB-C. I don't feel mobile pocketable computers should need to be handled with that much constant care and attention. I am doing that for how much I love this phone. If this experiment is to succeed, if it's to continue and refine and get better, it's those tiny little touches where busy day, miss the cable on the first plug attempt, plug it in on the second one. You shouldn't have to worry that later that day you're going to see a little crack or a piece of plastic chip out from around the protective cover. Again, throughout all of this, I've just been sitting here like absent-mindedly, like opening and closing this whole time. I can't help but do that when I'm paying attention to something else. My Duo has become my fidget spinner, a really expensive fidget spinner. But like if I'm cooking in the kitchen, there's a video propped up and playing on one screen. If I'm, when I'm eating lunch, there's YouTube going and then Discord on the other panel, and I'll be able to very quickly reference and catch up on stuff. Which totally brings me to my last kind of rambling point, where this is what I want out of a folding phone. Let's say we're going to make this just a 180-degree hinge, not a full wraparound, but it's a 180-degree hinge. Maybe there's a front screen, so now we have to go to a 2-screen device, but there's a proper folding display in here instead of a dual display. I really want this form factor, this aspect ratio for the inside canvas. I don't think propping up the tablet mode in a portrait experience and then folding the phone in half this way so that you end up with a ridiculously skinny outer display is the right way to handle productivity. You end up with one phone screen that is always too skinny and one phone screen that doesn't really make good use of space on most of your Android apps. You take a Galaxy Fold and you turn it sideways and you put the hinge on that orientation, and I think you end up with a better overall mini tablet experience. So folks, just some thoughts that I was having. I pick up this Duo more often than I'm really talking about it in videos, and that's also not fair of me. There's that fear of, if I spend so much time making Duo videos, is that going to tank my metrics on YouTube? And even I'm guilty of kind of playing with, how often I'm following up on this commentary. And so even from my own criticisms of other YouTubers, I don't feel like I'm living up to that standard, or at least the standard that I'm trying to judge other influencers by. But when I do come back to this phone, and when it's a regular player in our sort of little local area network of devices, it's constantly in our kitchen, it's constantly at our dining room table, got it, just propped up and playing a video on like one of our end tables, near the couch. Lex is watching some kid show, and I've just got like classic Star Trek streaming to this over some Bluetooth headphones. It is just a wonderful presence in our lineup of other devices. And it really reinforces to me, again, like I said in the main review, that maybe there is some life left in Android as an option for tablets. That maybe Android could become a better option for a larger slate computing form factor. That there's something there that we might be able to improve on, where Android could be doing a better job competing against Chrome OS. So folks, I'm strongly considering what phone I should do a revisit on next. I'm really taken with this conversation talking about hinges. Maybe it should be something like the Velvet. I'm really anxious to hopefully get some better news on software updates for the Wing and the Velvet. I think hinges are really cool, and there are different ways that we can accomplish hinges. But I'm thinking like maybe it's time to start also digging a little further back. If it's phones from 2019 or even phones from 2018, I recently pulled the Razer Phone 2 out of retirement just to pit it against the Galaxy S21, and for a phone on a Snapdragon 845, even older than the SoC on the Duo, it held its own pretty well against the latest and greatest from Samsung this year, and surprisingly had an up-to-date security patch waiting for me to install, which blew my mind. So if you've got any suggestions, drop some comments down below, and we can look at a catalog of older devices and older phones to look back on and have a little fun. As always, folks, thanks so much for watching. I definitely appreciate those of you who are going to be sharing these. They're only going to live on Patreon. They will eventually be public, but these are only going to be Patreon videos. So sharing these links, patreon.com, definitely appreciate those of you who are helping to spread the word on some longer term look backs. It's really nice. I enjoy it. I have fun with this. I miss doing the after the buzz on Pocket Now, and especially when it really was after the buzz, when there was a bit more of a window. So so keep those comments coming, keep those suggestions coming, and I think we're going to have a good time just looking at our smartphone history. You know where you can find me around the rest of the internet, at Some Gadget Guy on the Twitters and the Twitch, probably not on the Instagrams or the Facebooks, and I will catch you all on the next video.